10 million naira in one night. That's what they promised. But what the girls didn't know was that the price wasn't just their bodies. It was their destiny. Welcome to Tales at Dusk, a home of unique African tales. Esigani's box was packed, her admission letter folded neatly on top. It was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, leaving for university, stepping into freedom. Yet, as she tied her scarf that morning, she felt her mother's eyes on her. "Isi, sit," Rukevwe said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Isi obeyed, her younger sister Ephemena clutching her hand. Rukevwe leaned forward, her voice steady but heavy with warning. "My daughter, listen to me well. University is not Ogara. Out there you will meet friends who look like angels but carry knives behind their smiles. Bad company does not shout when it enters. It comes gently, softly, until one day you wake up and no longer know yourself." Isa's chest tightened, her mother's eyes narrowed, piercing. "They will tell you come just once. They will laugh when you say no. They will mock you, call you proud. But Ise, better they mock you than destroy you. A broken name is worse than hunger." Ephemena's small voice broke the silence. "Sisi, please come to visit us." Ise hugged her, forcing a smile, but her mother's grip on her arm tightened. "Esiagani," Rukevwe whispered, "you are my pride. Do not trade your dignity for friendship. Our people say character is beauty. Guard it." Outside, the bus horn blared. Ise stood, heart racing. She thought of her mother's advice, and the look in her mother's eyes was weak, as though she knew the road ahead would test her daughter's soul. When Esiogani arrived at Delta State University, her mother Rukevwe's warning echoed in her mind. Bad company enters quietly, until you no longer know yourself. She carried those words like a shield, and she would need them, because her new roommates, Ivy and Onome, lived a life completely opposite from hers. From the start, she saw the difference. While Issei rose early for lectures or prepared for fellowship, Ivy and Onome spent their days lounging in bed. But when Friday night arrived, the room turned into a party hall. Music blasted, perfumes filled the air, and the girls dressed in flashy clothes, ready for the night. Expensive cars with tinted windows would pull up at the hostel gates, and they would vanish until dawn. Their lifestyle was loud, lavish, and fueled by the attention of wealthy men, politicians, businessmen, even married lecturers. By morning, they returned with cash, new phones, wigs, or bags, living like queens in a campus world where money spoke loudly. But they never stopped trying to drag Issei into their world. "Issei, you're wasting your beauty," Ivy said one evening, applying lipstick before heading out. "One night with us and you'll never worry about school fees again." Onome laughed, pointing at Issei's simple dress. "Church girl. Na fellowship go buy you iPhone. You too, they form holy. Their words cut, but Issei stood firm. She smiled politely, shook her head, and said, "I'm fine like this." Her rejection made her the constant target of their teasing. Every Sunday, when she dressed for church, they mocked her as Sister Preacher. Whenever she prayed, they giggled in the background. To them, she was a relic of morality in a world that moved fast and flashy. Yet Issei refused to bend. Every Friday, when her roommates stepped out into the night, she stayed behind, sometimes battling doubt. The sight of their new phones and handbags pricked at her heart. She struggled to buy handouts while they flaunted wealth. The temptation whispered, "Just once, Issei. No one will know." But her mother's words returned like a lifeline. "Better they mock you than destroy you." So she knelt by her bed, whispering prayers for strength, while the hostel around her buzzed with nightlife. As the months passed, the cycle continued. Her roommates chasing luxury, Issei chasing her books and faith. Their laughter grew sharper, their mockery more persistent. At times, their stares carried a hint of something darker than amusement, as if her refusal offended them. Still, S.A. held on. Her resolve made her an outsider in her own room, but she clung to her dignity. Esagani had held on for 2 years. She was glad her strength had never faltered. But one evening, everything changed. Her phone buzzed with an urgent call from home. Ephemena's voice trembled on the other end. "Cece, Mama collapsed this morning on her way to the market. I rushed her to the hospital and the doctor said we need money for treatment, and we need it fast. Please, Isi, do something. If we delay, I don't know what will happen." "I don't want Mama to die." Isi froze. Her chest tightened as if the air had been snatched away. She asked how much, and the figure made her heart sink. It was more than she had ever held in her life. "Ephemena, I don't have that kind of money," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Cece, please," her sister begged. "Mama is all we have." When the call ended, S.A. sat in silence, her hands trembling. Her box of belongings was bare, her account almost empty. She had no money for herself, let alone for a hospital bill, and not like they had any good relatives to run to. Desperation drove her to the last place she wanted to turn. Her roommates. That night, as Ivy and Onome prepared for their usual outing, Isi swallowed her pride and spoke. "Please, I need your help. My mother is very sick. The hospital needs money urgently. Can you lend me some? I'll pay back, I promise." For a moment, they stared at her. Then laughter filled the room. Ivy clutched her chest, giggling. Onome shook her head, smirking. "Ise, Sister Preacher is finally begging," Ivy mocked. "You think money falls from the sky?" Onome leaned closer, her voice smooth and sharp. "There's only one way to get real money, Isi. You have what men want. Use it. That's how we live. That's how we shine. You want to save Mama. Then stop this churchy character of yours." Their words stabbed her. She shook her head violently. "No, I can't do that." But the laughter did not stop. Their voices circled her mind like chains. "One night only," they whispered. "No harm. Nobody will know. You'll have what you need, and you can go back to being Sister Preacher tomorrow." Issei resisted at first. She prayed, she cried, she reminded herself of Rukevwi's warning. But each time her phone rang and Ephemena's broken voice pleaded, her resistance cracked a little more. The weight of helplessness grew unbearable. The image of her mother on a sick bed, perhaps dying, clawed at her heart. What was dignity worth if she lost the woman who gave her life? Finally, the next weekend, when the pressure became too much, Ivy placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's just one time, Isi. Just once. You'll get the money." Nobody will ever know. Isi closed her eyes. Her breath shook. Against every instinct, against every prayer she had ever said, she nodded. That night, for the first time, she followed them into the shadows, and nothing would ever be the same again. The car that picked them up that Friday night gleamed under the hostel streetlight. Music thumped low from inside, and the tinted windows hid the men who waited. Ivy and Onome slid into the back seat with practiced ease, their perfume filling the air. S.A. hesitated, clutching her small bag as though it were her last piece of safety, before climbing in. Inside, laughter and smooth voices welcomed them. The men were older, dressed in rich agenda, their colognes thick with wealth. One of them glanced at Issei, his eyes soft but unreadable, and smiled. They were driven to a lavish house on the outskirts of town, a place that seemed like another world. Golden lights, wine glasses clinking, music flowing through the walls. Issei's heart pounded. She had never seen wealth this close, never felt so out of place. Hours passed in a haze of laughter, drinks, and loud music. Ivy and Onome were in their element, whispering and giggling into the ears of their chosen men. Essie sat quietly, clutching her phone, her stomach a knot of fear. Finally, as the night deepened, the men began to lead their companions away. Issei followed hers reluctantly, dread rising in her chest. She whispered prayers under her breath, bracing herself for the worst. But when they entered the quiet room, something unexpected happened. The man poured himself a drink, pulled off his agbada, and sighed heavily as though exhausted by the world. Then he turned to her and said, almost gently, "Relax. I don't want anything from you. Just stay here tonight. I just need a companion." Issei blinked, frozen. "You mean you don't?" He shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "No, just keep me company. That's all." 4 hours they sat in silence, interrupted only by brief conversation. He asked about her studies, her family, her dreams. His tone was kind, almost fatherly, and Issei, though still uneasy, felt a strange calm wash over her. She was wondering if he would still offer her money. By morning, when it was time to leave, the man reached into his wallet. The bundle of cash he pressed into her hands made her breath hitch. It was more money than she had ever seen, enough to cover her mother's hospital bills, and still leave some left. Issei stood there, speechless, staring at the notes in her hand. Gratitude and disbelief swirled inside her. When they regrouped at the hostel later, Ivy and Onome boasted of their nights, the men, the gifts, the pleasures. But when Issei told them her story, their faces fell into shock. "You mean he didn't touch you?" Ivy asked, eyes wide. "And still gave you that kind of money?" Onome added, disbelief lacing her voice. Essay nodded slowly, her own voice trembling. "He just wanted company. That's all. And he gave me more than enough." For once her roommates were silent, their mocking replaced by something else. Envy, suspicion, perhaps even fear. Issei clutched the money tighter. She had to save her mother. The next morning, Isegeni wasted no time. With the bundle of cash hidden deep in her bag, she boarded a bus to Ogara. Every bump on the dusty road seemed to echo the pounding of her heart. She thought only of her mother's weak voice over the phone and of Ephemina's tears. At the hospital, when she handed the doctor the money, relief washed over her like cool rain. Mama Rukevwe, frail but alive, squeezed her daughter's hand. "My child," she whispered, her eyes glistening, "God has answered." "But tell me, Esse, how did you get such money so quickly?" Esse froze. Her mother's searching eyes felt like they could pierce her soul. But then she forced a smile and lied. I asked my roommate. Her father sent money and she gave it to me." Rukevwe nodded slowly, believing her. "God bless her. And bless you, my daughter. May you always walk the right path." The words stung like fire, but Issei said nothing. Back at school days, one quiet evening in the hostel, when Ivy and Onome burst through the door, their laughter loud, their eyes shining with excitement. "Esse," Ivy announced dramatically, tossing her bag on the bed. "Next weekend is fire. The biggest party ever, only for the rich Alhajis. And guess what? They're giving 10 million naira each to the girls." Esse blinked, stunned. 10 million? Onome clapped her hands, grinning. "Yes, but it's not for everybody. Just 5 girls. Imagine, Issei, 10 million in one night. Your life will never be the same again." Issei's chest tightened. She shook her head. "I don't think. I can't." But Ivy cut her off, her tone sharp but persuasive. "Think well, sister preacher. Do you want to keep suffering? Do you want to keep begging your poor mother for money she doesn't even have? One night, Issei. One. And your problems are gone." Onome leaned close, her voice soft and sly. "Did the last one harm you? Number. You came back safe. You even saved your mother's life with that money. And she never knew where it came from. What's the difference this time? Just one night, and 10 million. 10 million, Issei. Issei's thoughts raced. 10 million. Her mother's frail smile at the hospital, her sister's desperate voice on the phone. The weight of her struggles pressed hard on her chest. Finally, she whispered, almost to herself, "All right, I'll go after all." The last time was smooth. From the moment Issei agreed, her heart had not rested. Each night she lay awake, asking herself if she had made a mistake. Just once, she reminded herself, one night, and everything will change. Still, something deep inside her whispered unease. When the night finally came, a black SUV pulled up in front of the hostel. The windows were tinted, the engine low and powerful. The driver, dressed in black, didn't say a word as Ivy, Onome, and Issei climbed in. It was just the three of them, the air inside thick with perfume and tension. Issei sat quietly, her hands clasped together. Evie and Onome were excited, whispering about the money, about the new lives they would live once it came. But Issei could barely breathe. Every bump in the road felt like it carried her further away from herself. The journey lasted almost an hour, winding through lonely roads until they reached a gated mansion. The compound glowed with golden lights, fountains spraying water high into the air. Luxury dripped from every corner, from the marble pillars to the fleet of exotic cars parked neatly in the driveway. But as Issei stepped out of the SUV, her stomach tightened. Inside the grand hall, 5 men awaited. They were not laughing or drinking like the men at the last party. They stood in a row, tall and imposing, dressed entirely in red and white. Each wore a red bandana tied across his forehead, and in each hand was a white staff, carved at the top with the head of a dragon. Their presence sucked the air out of the room. Issei's heart pounded as her eyes darted between them. The way they stood, the way their eyes scanned the girls. There was nothing casual about it. Something felt ritualistic, deliberate, almost dangerous. She swallowed hard, instinct screaming at her to turn back. But the doors behind her had already closed. The other girls, 5 in total, didn't seem to care. They were busy giggling, their minds already on the prize. 10 million naira each. Ivy nudged her, smiling. "Issei, relax. This is the life we told you about. Just look at this place. You see money dripping from the walls." Onome laughed, flipping her hair. "Stop acting scared. No one is going to eat you up." But Des couldn't shake it. The dragon-headed staffs gleamed under the chandelier, their shadows long and sharp against the marble floor. And the men, they hadn't smiled once. Issei's knees trembled. The hall was silent, the 5 men in red and white, standing like statues with their dragon-headed staffs. Their eyes, cold and unblinking, fixed on the girls who sat nervously before them. One of the men finally stepped forward. His voice was deep, commanding. "Sit down. Relax yourselves. Tonight is for you. But first, you must drink." A servant walked in, carrying a wide calabash filled with a reddish liquid. It shimmered under the chandelier, thick and strange. The man placed it on the table before the girls. "This," one of the men said, tapping the calabash with his staff. "Drink, all of you. It is nothing, just to welcome you." The girls exchanged glances. Fear danced in their eyes. Onome whispered, "What is this? Why must we drink first?" But another of the men slammed his staff against the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. "It is nothing but a drink. If you refuse, you leave with nothing." The first girl, trembling, stepped forward. She lifted the calabash, sniffed the strange red liquid, and took a shaky sip. She coughed, gagging, but passed it on. One after another, they all drank. Some hesitated, some cried, but they obeyed. When it reached Issei, her hands froze. The smell was metallic, almost like blood mixed with palm wine. Her heart raced. What if it's poison? What if— Drink, another man barked. Issei swallowed hard, and without any other words she raised it to her lips and let the bitter liquid burn its way down her throat. The moment the calabash was empty, another man raised his staff again. His words cut the air like a knife. Now listen. There is one rule: no protection, flesh to flesh. That is the way we can enjoy it. The girls gasped. Ivy bit her lip, nervous but defiant. Onome muttered, "A beg, even if no condom. After tonight we fit treat ourselves. 10 million go solve everything. Infection, pregnancy, anything." The others nodded, their fear already drowned by the thought of riches. But Issei's mind spiraled. No protection. What if I catch HIV? What if I get pregnant? What if this ruins my whole life? Her palms grew clammy, her chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to run. But she was already in, and the greedy sparkle in the other girl's eyes told her she was alone in her fear. "Try and calm down," Ivy whispered to her. "It's just one night." The men began leading each girl away, one by one, to separate rooms. Issei's feet felt heavy as she followed hers, her mind screaming louder than her voice ever could. That night, the deal was sealed. Flesh to flesh. No barrier. Hours later, they regrouped in the hall. Each girl carried thick bundles of cash, 10 million naira, handed to them without a word. The money was heavy in their hands, but heavier in their hearts. The SUV dropped them at their hostel before dawn. The girls squealed with excitement, hugging their money, already dreaming of the lives they would build. Ivy danced, Onomi laughed, the others gossiped about how easy it all was. But Issei sat on her bed, silent. She stared at the bundles of cash lying before her. To them it was freedom. To her it was chains. Something had left her that night, her peace, her sense of self. The laughter around her rang hollow, and in her chest an emptiness grew. Issa knew, even then, that the price of that night might be far greater than 10 million. Exactly 2 weeks after the night with the Alhajis. Onome was the first. She had just returned from class when she noticed her monthly flow hadn't stopped. At first, she told herself it was stress, maybe the weather. But as the days stretched, the blood didn't cease. It trickled. By the 5th day, she was pale and weak, her eyes hollow, and then she began to smell. At first it was faint, a sourness that clung to her clothes, but soon it grew unbearable. Whenever she passed, students covered their noses and whispered. In the lecture hall, people shifted away, muttering insults. One night in the hostel, Ivy pinched her nose and snapped, "Onome, what is going on?" "You smell like something dead." Onome's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. I've bathed and bathed. Nothing works. My period won't stop. I'm bleeding every day." They rushed her to the hospital. Tests were done. Doctors frowned, shook their heads. "There's nothing wrong with you," they said. "Your blood is normal. Your body is fine." But Onome knew she was not fine. The smell grew worse, haunting her, isolating her. Then came Ivy's turn. It started with her buttocks, swelling painfully so much she could barely sit. Then her belly began to grow, round and heavy like a pregnant woman. But she wasn't pregnant. Instead, her skin broke out in strange pores, leaking pus that reeked of rot. She covered herself in perfumes, creams, powders, but nothing masked the stench. In class, people whispered, "What is wrong with her body?" Others mocked, "She's rotting alive." Desperate, she too went to the hospital, but like Onomi, the doctors found nothing. No infection, no disease, they said. But Ivy could see her body betraying her in the mirror. Her beauty, the source of her pride, was crumbling into a grotesque horror. And then there was Issei. Her torment was quieter, but no less cruel. Slowly she began to dry. Her cheeks sank, her skin stretched thin over her bones. No cream, no food seemed to help. Her body looked as though life itself was leaking out. Yet when she sought medical help, the results were always the same. You are perfectly healthy. Perfectly healthy, yet every morning she woke weaker, thinner, closer to something skeletal. The three girls hid their suffering from others, but inside their room the truth festered. Onome lay in bed, the sheets stained, the smell unbearable. Ivy cried into her pillow, her swollen belly heaving, pus seeping through her clothes. AC sat silently in the corner, clutching her knees, her eyes sunken with fear. They didn't need to speak it out loud, but the memory of that night hung heavy in all their minds. The calabash, the staff, the rules. Yet none of them dared say it. Who would believe them? To others, they were just three girls with strange, unexplainable illnesses. But in the stillness of the night, when the hostel lights went out, they would hear each other's muffled sobs. The money sat untouched in their boxes, stacks of naira that should have brought joy. But now it looked like blood money. Cursed money, each note a reminder of the night that had sealed their fate. Isi stared at hers often, her thin hands trembling. She had wanted freedom, a better life for her mother, her sister. Instead, she had walked into chains she could not break. And as the days bled into weeks, one truth settled heavily over the three of them. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. Their suffering grew worse with each passing week. Onome's bleeding never stopped, staining her sheets, weakening her body, and leaving behind a stench that drove everyone away. Ivy's beauty turned into horror. Her swollen belly and leaking sores made her hide in shame. And Isi, the quietest of them, wasted away, her body thinning to skin and bone, her laughter gone. The hospitals had no answers. "You are fine," the doctors repeated, but they knew they weren't fine. Something beyond medicine had taken root. One night, as the three of them sat in silence, Issei broke down. Her voice was weak, but her words carried weight. "We can't keep living like this. This is not ordinary. We need God. We need to see a pastor." At first, Onome scoffed through her tears. "After all we've done, will God even listen?" But Ivy, clutching her swollen belly, whispered, "If we don't try, we will die." "Let's go." For the first time in months, a flicker of hope filled the room. The next morning, they dragged themselves to a small church at the edge of town. The pastor took one look at them and shook his head. "You girls walked into the den of lions," he said, "but thank God you are still alive." As he prayed, they wept. After a long silence, he revealed the truth. "The men you went to are occultists, blood drinkers, destiny exchangers. That drink you swallowed was not ordinary, it was a covenant. They used your bodies as gates to steal your future. That is why your lives are rotting while the money looks clean." The girls sobbed uncontrollably, but the pastor's voice rose firmly. "Jesus Christ breaks every covenant. If you surrender your lives to him, he will restore you." Onome fell to her knees, screaming, "Save me, Lord." Ivy collapsed beside her. "Forgive me, I was blind." Issei trembled, whispering, "Don't let me die like this, Father." Prayers filled the room. The power of God fell. Onome vomited a thick, dark substance. Ivy convulsed as her swelling began to shrink, and Issei gasped, rising with new strength in her frail body. The torment that had chained them for months broke that night. Healing came slowly but surely. Onomi's bleeding stopped and her odor vanished. Ivy's sores dried, her belly flattened, and her skin healed. Issei regained weight, her laughter returning with every passing day. The cursed money was destroyed. The pastor warned them, "This money carries blood. Burn it." They obeyed, and for the first time peace filled their hearts. From then they chose a new path, not for themselves, but for God. Months later, the three girls were unrecognizable, not because of beauty, but because of the fire in their souls. Onome began testifying in fellowships, warning younger girls about the lure of fast money. Ivy mentored students in the hostel, teaching them the value of patience and dignity. And Essay, she became a preacher. Her words cut deep because they came from scars that had healed. "Don't trade your destiny for a night of pleasure," she told crowds of young girls. "Money that looks sweet can be poison. I almost lost everything, but God saved me." Together they turned their pain into a platform, their shame into a testimony. They were no longer victims. They were survivors, redeemed, restored, saved. Years later, Isi stood before hundreds at a youth conference. Her voice was steady, her eyes blazing. "My sisters, men that look rich can be vultures. Your future is too precious to gamble away. Stay away from shortcuts. Hold on to God. If He saved me, He can save you." The hall was silent. Many cried. Isi stepped down with peace in her heart. The scars remained, but they were no longer chains. They were proof of a God who saves. Moral of the story: money that comes quickly often carries a price too heavy to pay. Isi and her friends thought 10 million naira would change their lives, but instead it almost destroyed their destinies. Some shortcuts lead only to suffering, and some doors, once opened, can never be closed. But tell me, if you were in Isi's shoes, would you have taken the money or walked away? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more chilling African spooky stories.